Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Shabbos Daf Kuf Lamed Zayin takes us to the end of the 19th parak of Mesechus Shabbos, that is parak Rabbi Elazar Zemila, and it begins the 20th chapter, which is parak Teilin. The last daf has 3 mishnayos in it, and then of course there's an additional mishnah when we start the new parak. The first discussion is on the subject of what happens when you have 2 children to do a milah and you confuse them and you end up doing the wrong milah on the wrong day, and one of the days is Shabbos. What happens then? Is that an Issa D'Oraisa? Is that a carbon chatas? Next we discuss in the next mishnah what happens when a child's bris needs to be postponed, what are valid reasons for postponing the bris. And the third one is what exactly needs to be cut and what strips of skin are an issue which prevents the milah from being a kosher. Okay, then we get to Perek Toilin, which discusses the halachas of oil, creating a temporary structure or roofing situation on Shabbos. We begin the daf with the first mishnah, which is a discussion of what happens if you do a bris on Shabbos, but it was the wrong baby and therefore it's the wrong day. So we have our mishnah and our version of it. The Gemara is going to bring 2 and even a third other versions of what this mishnah may be supposed to read. And the variables are as follows. The baby that you ended up doing the bris on Shabbos, he was supposed to have his bris on a Friday, the day before, and you did the bris a day late? Or was he supposed to have his bris on Sunday and you did the bris a day early? What's the difference? If you did the bris a day late, at least you did a mitzvah. You did a bris. You weren't supposed to do it on Shabbos because it's not a bris bizmana, it's not in its right time, but at least you did a mitzvah. If, however, it was a Sunday bris and you did it on Shabbos, so you did it a day early, that's not a mitzvah. That's just cutting a child for no reason. And that's a chil Shabbos without any mitzvah involved. Now, there are 2 factors to figure out whether the person who did the bris has to bring a carbon or not. First of all, did he do a mitzvah or not? Obviously, if it's a Friday bris and he did it on Shabbos, it's better because that at least is a mitzvah. If it's a Sunday bris, it's not a mitzvah at all. The other factor is, was he confused because he was trying to do a mitzvah, or did he have no excuse to do this at all? So, what does that depend on? If there was another child whose bris was supposed to be on Shabbos, so then he thought he was doing a mitzvah. He thought he was doing a Shabbos bris. He got confused. Okay, that's not so bad. If, however, there was no other child who was supposed to have a bris that day, so then he had no reason to do anybody's bris. He had a Friday bris. He did it on Shabbos. Well, what kind of business? You didn't have a reason to do any bris on Shabbos. So our Mishnah has the following 2 cases. If it was a Friday bris, let's begin with if it was a Sunday bris. If it was a Sunday bris, it was a day early, so he didn't do a mitzvah at all. So everybody in the Mishnah agrees he has to bring a carbon chatas. Even though he was busy trying to do a mitzvah, he had another bris to do on Shabbos. He had 2 babies. He had one that was supposed to have a bris on a Shabbos. He thought he was doing a mitzvah. Still, since he didn't end up actually doing a mitzvah because he did a Sunday bris a day early, he has to bring a carbon chatas. When is there a machlokes? When it was a Friday bris. According to Rabbi Eliezer, he has to make a carbon chatas, even though he's trying to do a mitzvah, and he did a mitzvah, but still he had no right to do it on Shabbos. He did a Friday bris on a Shabbos. And if he has to bring a carbon chatas, according to Rabbi Yeshua, he's pater. Now, that's our version of the Mishnah. The Gemara brings that there is another version of this. That our version also coincides with the Shimon ben Elazar's version of a brisa, and that is how Rav Huna understood our Mishnah. That's all the same way. However, Rav Yehuda, the Amira, had a different version of the brisa, and that is a brisa presented by Rabbi Meir. So that is a different version. According to that version, everybody agrees where it was a Friday bris and it was a day early. Everybody agrees in that case that you're pater. You didn't do anything wrong. I wouldn't say you didn't do anything wrong. You don't have to bring a carbon chatas. You were trying to do a mitzvah and you did a mitzvah. You weren't supposed to do it, but still you tried and you did a mitzvah. If, however, it was a Sunday bris, you did it a day early, there is an actual machlokes. Now the Gemara says, whichever way you understand the machlokes, whether it's in the case of the Friday bris or it's in the case of the Sunday bris, the machlokes between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer is over the link between all carbon chatos and avodah zarah. We have a connection. All carbon chatos are connected to avodah zarah because in Parshas Shlach, and it discusses Avodah Zarah and the Korban Chatas you have to bring, it says that these are the rules for all Chatos. So every Korban Chatas has to be similar to Avodah Zarah in some way. So now, if the Machlokes is over Friday bris, so then what happened? The one who says you have to bring a Korban Chatas says you did an Avera. You weren't allowed to do what you did. You did something on Shabbos and you were not allowed to do it. The other one says, yeah, okay, but this is different than Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah is not a mitzvah. This was a mitzvah. You did a bris. That's a mitzvah. If the Machlokes is about a Sunday bris, so then again, the one who says you have to bring a Chatas says the same thing. You weren't allowed to do what you did. You did an Avera, even though you didn't intend to. And the other one says, fine, but at least I was trying to do a mitzvah. I didn't actually do a mitzvah because I did a bris a day early, but I was trying to do a mitzvah. Avodah Zarah is different. You weren't trying to do any mitzvah. Now, the Gemara brings another version of this entire machlokes, and this one doesn't seem to make sense, and the Gemara will explain it. This version is that in the case where it was a Friday bris and you did it a day late, there everybody agrees that you're chayiv to bring a korban chatas. So there it's worse. Everybody says you have to bring a korban chatas. Where's there a machlokes? That's in the case where it was a day early, and Rabbi Yeshua says you don't have to bring a korban chatas. And the Gemara right away asks, how does this make any sense? If in the situation where you did an actual mitzvah, it was a day early. It was supposed to be a day earlier. The bris was supposed to be on Friday, and you did it on Shabbos. You did a mitzvah, and still Rabbi Yeshua says you have to bring a korban chatas. Why would he say that if it was a day Why would he say that if it was supposed to be on a Sunday that you don't have to bring a korban chatas? There you didn't do any mitzvah at all. You did it a day early. How does that make sense? The Gemara says the case over here was where you actually had one bris that was supposed to be on Shabbos. That bris you did on Friday. So by the time Shabbos rolled around, you didn't have any bris left to do. You had a bris that was supposed to be done on Friday, and you did that on Shabbos, but you didn't have any reason to do anything on Shabbos, because you didn't have any brisim left to do. The bris that was supposed to be on Shabbos, you had done early on Friday already. So you can't tell me on Shabbos I made a mistake because I thought I was doing a mitzvah. I got confused. You didn't have a bris to do. The bris was done. And therefore, you have no excuse, and you have to bring a korban chatas, even though what you did is actually a mitzvah. Now the Gemara asks, what do you mean? He didn't have a bris to do, but there were brisim in the world to do. The Gemara says, brisim in the world, that doesn't help you. You didn't have an excuse. You didn't have a reason, and therefore you have to bring a korban chatas. Okay, now we start the next Mishnah, which discusses when you could possibly push over bris, and this Mishnah notes you could have a bris that falls out properly on the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th day from the birth of the child. The 8th day is obviously when it's supposed to be, so let's say the baby's born on a Sunday, then the bris will be next week Sunday, 8 days later, including the first day and the last day. If, however, the baby was born Sunday evening, twilight between Sunday and Monday, so then we don't know if he was born on Sunday or on Monday, then the bris will be on next Monday, because we'll have to cover the possibility that he was born really on Monday, which is 9 days after Sunday. Now, if he was born at twilight between Friday and Shabbos, then you can't do the bris on Friday because maybe he was born on Shabbos. You can't do the bris on Shabbos because maybe he was born on Friday. So the first time you can safely do the bris is on Sunday, which is 10 days later. If Sunday was Yom Tov, you wouldn't be able to do it until Monday, which is 11 days later. And if Sunday and Monday were both Yom Tov, which could happen even in Eretz Yisrael when it's Rosh Hashanah, then you wouldn't be able to do it until 12 days later, which is on Tuesday. And that's all the situations that you have. However, if the child is sick, he's not healthy, then you push it off the bris as long as it takes for him to become healthy again, and that's when you do the bris. Now, the Gemara begins and Shmuel says you don't do the bris right away after he recovers. You actually wait 7 days after he recovers from the fever, and then you do the bris later. The Gemara says 7 days. That's 7 days, but you can do it early on the 7th day. Like any bris you do early on the 8th day, even if it's not 8 full 24-hour periods after the baby was born. You just do it at that day, or do you have to wait 7 times 24 hours, and only then can you do the bris. So the Gemara wants to bring a proof from a chacham by the name of Luda, who says that the day that he recovers is like the day that he's born, and that's when you start counting the 7 days. So the Gemara says, so you see that it should be the same. Just like there, you don't have to wait till the exact hour of the day. So here also you don't have to wait till the exact hour of the day. So the Gemara says, no, it's different, it's the same, but it's not the same. You start counting the 7 days, just like the day he is born, you start counting the 8 days. But here, for recovery, you do have to wait 7 times 24 hours. You have to wait to the time of day that he recovered, and there, in that sense, it's different than the bris. Okay, we now begin the next Mishnah, which discusses the strips of skin that are left over from the Mila that are a problem and have to be removed. So the Mishnah defines strips of skin that are a problem are as if it covers the majority of the atara. Now the atara is the ridge where the head of the organ meets the shaft, that raised ridge, which goes all the way around. That is the atara. And if that's covered by skin, that's a problem. It has to be the majority of that atara that's covered to be a problem. Now, the Mishnah adds, if the child or whoever it is very fat, and therefore the flesh slides back over the atara, and it looks like he doesn't have a bris, even though he does have one, so you should surgically remove that extra flesh so that it should appear as if he has a bris. Should not appear as if he does not have one. Now the Mishnah concludes and says that somebody who does a bris milah and does not peel back the membrane, it doesn't count as a bris milah at all. Okay, the Gemara. First of all, as far as defining the atara, the skin that covering the atara, it says covering the majority means not the circumference of the atara, but it means the height of the atara. Majority of the height is covered, that's a problem. Okay, next we said that if the child has a lot of flesh and it appears that he doesn't have a bris milah, so here we have Shmuel and a Brisa saying the same thing but from opposite ends. They both say that you don't judge when the organ is soft, you judge it when it is hardened, when it has an erection, and then the flesh spreads backwards and it might be easier to see the bris. If you can see that there's a milah, then you don't have to do anything about it. But the way Shmuel says it is, he says that if it appears that he has a bris, you don't have to do anything. The way the Brisa says is, if it does not appear that he has a bris, then you do have to do something. The Gemara says, what's the difference between the two ways of saying it? The Gemara says the difference is if it is not clear, somewhere in the middle. It appears like it has a bris, but it doesn't appear that it has a bris. So according to Shmuel's approach, you cannot say it looks like a bris, and therefore you have to do something about it. According to the Brisa, you cannot say it doesn't look like a bris, and therefore you don't have to do anything about it. Okay, now the Gemara brings a Brisa which defines what all the brachas we say at a bris milah are. So the one who performs the milah, the moel himself, always says Asher Kiddushanu b'Mitzvah v'Tzivanu ala milah. Now when it's a baby, the father says Asher Kiddushanu b'Mitzvah v'Tzivanu lachnisa v'Brisa shel Avram Avinu. And everybody who's standing there says, just like he enters the covenant of Avraham Avinu, may he also enter into Torah learning, a marriage, and doing good deeds. Then there are brachas at the end of the bris, and here we're going to have a few of these. So at a regular bris for a child, you say Asher Kidash, Yidid Mibeten, that he sanctified the beloved one from the stomach. This is referring to Yitzchak, who's called Yidid, beloved. He was the first person born with an obligation to do a bris, and the first one to have a bris when he was 8 days old. And then it says, Chayk b'sheirei sam, you placed a mitzvah on his flesh, you sealed his offspring with the sign of the holy covenant. Al kain mischar zayis. Therefore, in the merit of this, Kel Chai Chalkeinu, we have a different version here. Tziva lahatzal yedidos she'ereinu mishachas. L'man brisa shesam b'v'sareinu. The living portion, which is ours, you should command to save the beloved remnants of our nation from destruction because of the bris that you sealed in our flesh. Baruch atah Hashem kares habris. Blessed are you, Hashem, who seals the covenant. Okay, now that last bracha is different for a ger, a bris of a ger, or a bris of an eved. If it's a bris of a ger, so first of all, the bracha says Asher Kiddushanu b'Mitzvah v'Tzivanu lamul es hagerim lahativ mehem dam bris. Blessed are you, our God, that gave us the mitzvah to do a bris milah on a convert and to remove drops of blood, to draw blood, because if not for blood of the bris, then heavens and earth would not last. If not for the bris of the day and the night, and the laws of heaven and earth would not be placed. Baruch atah Hashem kares bris. On the avodim, you say a similar thing, except you say Asher Kishanu M'toysev V'tzivanu Lama Osa Avodim, and the rest the same. Latim Dan Bris Shemali Dan Bris Chlukas Shemayim in the Skaimush and Emram Lei Brisi Yom V'Layla Chlukas Shemayim V'Eretz Lei Samti Baruch atah Hashem kares bris. That is the end of Parak Rabbi Elazar de Mila. Now we begin the next Parak Tailin, which also begins with the words Rabbi Eliezer. And we begin with a discussion about halacha of ohel. Oh means ohel arai. Now this is the following halacha. It is forbidden to build any type of structure, any type of protected environment midaraisa on Shabbos if it's permanent. If it is temporary, meaning you're spreading some kind of a temporary roof or possibly walls with a roof, that is an Issur D'Rabbanan called ohel arai. It's not an Issur D'Oraisa because it's not meant to last, but it is an Issur D'Rabbanan. The sugi here that's being discussed is of what if you're planning to do something else, but you are making a roof along the way. So the issue here, what's happening is that you're spreading a straining cloth over a kli, kind of like a vat, and what you would like to do is strain wine. You're going to pour wine through the cloth so that the wine runs into the kli that's underneath it. So you have a few problems here. First of all, when you spread the cloth, you're creating a roof. The cloth forms a roof over the vacuum underneath it. Second of all, when you're going to pour the wine into it, you're actually going to strain the sediment out. Now, that's not the classic way of straining, but it is straining to some extent. So are you allowed to do that or not? So you have a machlokas here. Rabbi Eliezer says as follows: you are allowed to put the strainer on the cloth on Yom Tov, but not on Shabbos. And if you have a strainer already there, then you're allowed to strain even on Shabbos. The straining is not a problem because it's not the classic way that straining is performed, and therefore it's not the actual Isser. Now the Chachamim say you're not allowed to put the cloth on even on Yom Tov, and you're not allowed to strain on Shabbos. The only thing you're allowed to do is if the cloth is already there, then you can strain through it on Yom Tov. Okay, so the Gemara begins, and the Gemara says, I don't understand Rabbi Eliezer here. You're telling me that he says you're allowed to spread the cloth on Yom Tov. Why would you be allowed to do that? You're creating an OL. We even see that Rabbi Eliezer says that you're not even allowed to put a window stopper into the window if it's a skylight, because you're creating a roof. Even if it's in the wall, you are adding onto the wall itself, right? This is a Mishnah we had earlier. Are you allowed to place the shutter into the window? Rabbi Eliezer says only if it's hanging from a rope and it's not dragging on the floor, because otherwise it's considered like you're building something into the wall or the roof. And the Chachamim say, no, it's fine. You don't need to. You're allowed to add it on even if it's not hanging from the string. So we see from this is that Rabbi Eliezer says that you are considered to be creating something. It is a problem of ohel anytime you're adding onto a building, even if it's temporary. So how would you be allowed to spread this cloth here, which is not adding, it's creating an entire ceiling altogether? So Gemara answers, the reason why you're allowed to do this here has nothing to do with Hilchas Ohel. It's about Hilchas cooking on Yom Tov. He says you're allowed to spread it on Yom Tov because you are trying to prepare food, and any part of the food preparation is permitted in accordance to the opinion of Rav Yehuda, which we see in a Brisa. You're allowed to cook on Yom Tov. Not only are you allowed to do actual cooking, you're even allowed to do machshirei, ochel, nefesh, things to prepare for Yom Tov. So to set up the strainer is okay, even though it would be an Isser of Ohel. It's okay since it's food related. Now the Gemara says, hold on a second. Rav Yehuda only said that about things which you couldn't do before Yom Tov, but this strainer you could have spread out there before Yom Tov. Why should you be allowed to do it here? So the Gemara says, yes, Rabbi Eliezer goes like Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, and he even goes a little bit further. He says you're allowed to do things which are preparing to be able to cook, and you're even allowed to do it if you could have done it before Yom Tov.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.